Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. He built his dream home by hand, deep in the wild, far from rules and noise. 15 years of sweat, stone, and silence, until a ruthless HOA tried to claim it all with lies, bribes, and forged papers. But they didn't expect a fight. And they picked the wrong man. I bought the land in the fall of 2006. It wasn't much at the time, just a lopsided patch of dirt at the edge of nowhere, lined with stubborn mesquite trees, dry grass, and the kind of quiet that made your ears ring. But it was mine, all 42 acres of it, signed, notarized, and recorded in the county register with every legal T crossed and I dotted. That land cost me almost everything I had saved up from my years working as an infrastructure engineer for municipal utilities, plus a few emergency withdrawals from my retirement fund that I'd prefer the IRS never hears about. People didn't understand why I didn't just buy a house like everyone else. But I didn't want a prefab box with paper-thin walls and a matching mailbox like the rest of the sardine suburbia stretching across the county. I wanted something real, something permanent, something with my fingerprints in every beam, every pipe, every damn rock. So I started building. I didn't have much help. A few friends here and there, a contractor for the concrete pour on the foundation, an electrician when I didn't feel like electrocuting myself. But mostly, it was just me. A beat-up pickup truck, a half-functioning generator, and a thermos full of coffee. I spent weekends and vacations digging trenches for water lines, laying bricks, hauling rebar, and screaming at windstorms. It was a slow kind of madness, but it kept me grounded. Over the years, that dirt patch became something I was proud to call mine. First came the foundation and skeletal frame, then the outer shell, stone, and mortar, no vinyl in sight. The roof was pitch steep, made to handle the snow and tell the birds to build their nests somewhere else. The septic system was engineered with a slope so precise I probably over-engineered it by 3 decimal places. I added a solar grid, 2 backup batteries, an artesian well, and a fireproof storage bunker underneath the house, just in case. The whole thing was mine. The design, the labor, the blood on the joists from when I dropped a steel beam on my shin in 2014. Somewhere around year 8, people stopped asking when I'd finish the house. They started asking if I was off the grid. I wasn't. I just preferred to own every wire and pipe in my walls. I got my permits, did inspections, documented everything. I wasn't a fool. I knew that paper was king when the bureaucrats came knocking. By 2021, the house was done. A 2-story stone-walled estate with wide porches, arched windows, and the kind of craftsmanship that made YouTube commenters accuse me of hiring professionals. I didn't. I just had patience, a decent right angle, and a hard drive full of time-lapse footage. Living there full-time was like breathing for the first time. I planted trees. I built a workshop with double insulated walls and racks for every tool I owned. I landscaped a small orchard. I built a pond fed by runoff from the hills and stocked it with bluegill. I even set up a modest blog where I posted videos and articles about autonomous off-grid systems. Nothing fancy, just enough to get a few regulars commenting. My only neighbor for years was Miss Helen, a retired librarian in her 70s who brought me herbal tea and pies she swore she made from scratch, though I'm almost certain they came from a box. She was the kind of woman who sat on the porch with binoculars and kept a mental diary of the wildlife. She watched me build that house, season after season. I never asked her to, but I think it gave her something to root for. For 15 years, the land was quiet, loyal, and peaceful. Then came the construction noises. They started faint, maybe a mile away, with the thump of earth movers and the chirp of backup alarms. I figured someone was putting up a barn or running utility trenching. No big deal, but within 6 months, I saw the signs go up. Literal ones. North Ridge Community, a gated living experience. Concrete curbs, symmetrical sidewalks, and 2-story boxes wrapped in synthetic stone and fake shutters began sprouting like weeds. It was the kind of development that came with logos, newsletters, and rules about what shade of beige your front door could be. I watched from my porch with a thermos in hand as white SUVs with tinted windows rolled past my driveway and out-of-state plates filled the model home parking lot. The land around me was changing, and not for the better. I told myself I didn't need to care. My deed was ironclad. My property lines were older than most of the people moving in, and I wasn't part of any community plan, zone, or committee. Hell, the county still had my address listed under unincorporated private parcel. I had no reason to worry. That was my first mistake. It started with a basket of muffins. I was staining the front steps one Saturday morning when I noticed a white Lexus creeping up my drive, the kind of car that practically sneered at gravel. A woman in a salmon blazer and aggressively white sneakers stepped out. She was about 50, lean, with hair so tightly bobbed it looked like a military regulation. She carried a basket wrapped in cellophane and tied with a red ribbon. The muffins looked store-bought, probably from Whole Foods. She walked up like she owned the road. "Good morning." "You must be Robert." I stood up, rag in hand, squinting into the sun. "I might be." "Who's asking?" "Oh, of course. Where are my manners?" "I'm Karen. Karen Lawrence. I'm the newly elected president of the Northridge Community Association." I paused. "I'm not in Northridge." She chuckled like I'd made a cute joke. "Oh, we're all neighbors here, Robert. And sometimes we don't even realize we've already become part of something bigger." My eyebrows went up. "I'm going to stop you right there. My property isn't part of your development. I've got the original deed from 2006. This land isn't under any HOA jurisdiction." Karen's smile didn't even flicker. She just held out the basket. "Why don't we talk this over with some coffee and muffins?" I didn't take the basket. I don't do coffee with strangers who talk like real estate contracts. The smile cracked just a little. We just want a cohesive, harmonious community, uniform road access, shared maintenance responsibility, and consistent land use planning. Things that benefit everyone. Including you. I leaned against the railing. "Lady, I put in my own road, my own power, my own well. You think I want a shared maintenance responsibility? That's HOA speak for you sending me bills for potholes on roads I don't use." She clucked her tongue. "I can see this might take some time. We'll be in touch." She left the basket on my step and walked back to her Lexus. The tires kicked up my gravel, but not enough to matter. The muffins went straight to the compost pile. 2 weeks later, I got a letter. It was official looking, thick cream envelope, gold embossed seal for the Northridge Community Association. Inside was a multi-page packet titled Notice of Inclusion and Covenant Requirements. It claimed that per an updated regional development plan and consolidated easement agreements, my property had been absorbed into the community. I was, according to them, now a member of their HOA. And, surprise, I owed a one-time community impact fee of $12,000. They included a list of violations. My workshop violated visual unity standards. My fence was non-compliant. My security cameras infringed on neighbor privacy. Even the angle of my solar panels didn't meet their reflectivity guidelines. I laughed so hard I almost choked on my sandwich. Still, I took it seriously. I scanned the entire packet and drafted a response. Attached copies of my original purchase deed, title insurance, property surveys, permits for every structure, and a notarized letter from the county registrar confirming I was not and had never been part of any HOA. I mailed it certified with return receipt and sent an email with a digital copy, just to be safe. A week later, a new letter arrived. This one was less charming. It stated that since I had failed to acknowledge binding community governance, Northridge HOA was invoking emergency provisions to restrict access to common utility zones. According to them, that included the only access road to my property. I had to cease unauthorized use within 72 hours or face legal consequences. It was signed by Karen Lawrence, President, Northridge Community Association. Attached was a crudely drawn map with lines that looked like a toddler traced them in Sharpie over a faded satellite photo. They had just, bold as hell, drawn their development's boundary to include my property. I was still staring at the papers when I heard engines outside. 2 large box trucks were parked at the end of my drive. A couple of guys in reflective vests were unloading fencing panels, temporary construction-style barriers. They were setting them up across my only vehicle access point, right at the edge of the county road. I walked out and asked them what they thought they were doing. One of them, a skinny kid with an HOA badge, told me, "Just following orders. This is a community access restriction per court-issued notice. I asked to see the order." He handed me a laminated copy with an official-looking stamp. I knew that docket number format. It looked like a fake. I took a photo, then stepped back, called the sheriff's office, and reported a suspected trespass with obstruction. Then I called my lawyer. They had guts. I'll give them that. But what they didn't have was a legal leg to stand on. At least not yet. I didn't sleep much that night. Not out of fear, more like a builder watching termites crawl up the beams. You don't panic, but you know it's war now. By morning, I had a plan. First, I called Joe Tanner, a buddy from back in the day when we were both young, broke, and mapping utility grids in sub-zero wind. He's a licensed surveyor now, runs his own outfit 2 counties over. I told him I needed a full boundary confirmation, historic overlays, GPS verification, and he didn't even blink. "Still got that whiskey I left in your shop?" he asked. "If you get here by noon," I said, "I'll let you open it." Joe showed up that afternoon with 2 tripods, a drone, and a dog that immediately tried to eat my compost pile. We walked the line together, literally. My original boundary markers were still there, sunk 3 feet deep in concrete. Joe found them with a metal detector and GPS overlay, marked them with flags, and started cross-checking with his historical land use maps. He shook his head as we passed the northwest corner. "They just drew right over your lot like it was unclaimed frontier." Idiots didn't even notice this post predates their subdivision filings by 16 years. While Joe ran the drone flight and mapped coordinates, I called Catherine Ross, my attorney. Property law is her bread and butter, and she's meaner than a rattlesnake in court. I emailed her the scanned letter from the HOA, including that laughable court order. 30 minutes later, she called back, furious. "This isn't just invalid," she said. "It's forged. The docket number they listed belongs to a probate case from 5 years ago in a different county. They didn't even use the right court seal. Karen's slipping," I muttered. Catherine said she'd draft a formal cease and desist letter that afternoon and submit a request to the sheriff's office to formally investigate the forged document. But I wasn't done yet. I took the memory card out of my trail cam, the one pointed at the driveway. I'd rigged it years ago, mostly for deer, coyotes, and the occasional bored raccoon. Now it had footage of the 2 box trucks arriving, unloading, fencing off my road, and the skinny kid taping that fake court order to my fence post. I backed up the footage to a secure drive, time-stamped everything, and added it to my growing folder titled Incursion 1. Joe came in from the field just before sunset. "Survey matches your original plat perfectly. No encroachments, no errors. And you've got 10 feet of buffer beyond their supposed easement line. They don't have a leg to stand on." I nodded. I figured, but now I've got proof. Then I did something petty and satisfying. I printed their fake map, drew a giant red X through it, and duct taped it to the inside of my gate facing the road. 2 days later, I heard tires on gravel and looked out the window. A deputy cruiser rolled up, slow and deliberate. Out stepped Sheriff Brian Whitlock, a former crime scene specialist I'd worked with during my engineering years. He used to spend his nights cataloging blood spatter. Now he handled zoning disputes and lost dogs. Life's funny like that. We shook hands. "You're really poking the HOA hornet nest, huh?" "They started it," I said, offering him the cease and desist Catherine had filed, plus a copy of the fake order. He looked through it and let out a low whistle. "They really thought this would fly." "I've seen toddlers forge better," I said. Brian shook his head and promised to open an inquiry. He asked if I wanted to press charges for trespassing or just play it civil. I told him to start with a warning, but I wasn't going to be patient forever. The next day, the trucks and fencing were gone, just vanished overnight. No apology, no letter, no explanation. But that wasn't the end. That was a pause. Like a boxer stepping back after the first swing didn't land. I knew Karen. She didn't retreat. She recalculated. And whatever she was cooking next, it wouldn't involve muffins. They backed off for about 3 days. Then the game started. At first, it was little things, harmless even. I came out one morning to find the mail flag on my box up, but no mail inside. I figured it was the carrier's mistake until it happened again, then again. On the 4th day, I found a crumpled note in the box, anonymous, typed, printed on cheap paper. It read, "Comply or pay the price. Roads are for residents, no signature, no return address." But I had a pretty good guess. The following evening, I noticed something off near the west fence. One of the newly planted cedars looked tilting. I walked over and found the wire fencing neatly cut, one panel curled back like a peeled lid. Someone had slipped in. Nothing stolen, nothing broken, just a quiet message. We can come and go as we please. I reviewed the camera footage. Black screen, offline. That set off alarms. I hadn't had a single camera outage in 2 years. I checked the power feed. Intact. Then I checked the utility cabinet near the road and saw it immediately. The master cable bundle had been yanked, clean cut, pliers probably, maybe bolt cutters. The security seal was ripped off like wet paper. Whoever did it knew what they were cutting. Fortunately, I had contingency. A few years ago, I'd installed a separate offline server in the sub-basement of my workshop, mostly out of paranoia and habit from my days designing emergency infrastructure. It wasn't pretty, but it ran a shadow record of my entire network, on battery backup, completely air-gapped. I called it the dead man's camera. I pulled the drive. The footage was low-res, no audio, but it was there. Time-stamped, clear enough. 2 men, hooded, breaking the line at 0300 hours. One of them wore work boots with a neon orange stripe, standard issue for HOAs hired contractors. I checked the boot pattern against earlier footage from the fence crew. Match. I started another folder, sabotage_2. The very next morning, I woke up to find 2 SUVs parked on the easement outside my gate. Men in polos and mirrored sunglasses stood leaning against the hoods like bored nightclub bouncers. I walked out and asked if they needed something. "This is public access," one of them said. "Not according to the county registrar," I replied. "HOA zoning says otherwise." "Then take it up with my lawyer," I said, "or the sheriff. Your choice." They smirked and didn't move. I walked back inside, fired off an email to Sheriff Whitlock, copied Catherine, and then installed 2 more hidden cameras with independent solar power and encrypted radio uplinks, courtesy of a buddy from a prior side project involving wildfire. Perimeter surveillance. I wasn't going to be caught blind again. The cherry on top came 2 days later. A notice posted, yes, taped, to my front door. Notice of ongoing violations. It accused me of blocking community right-of-way, failing to adhere to HOA fence standards, and operating unlicensed surveillance equipment that posed privacy risks to neighboring families. I laughed. Then I checked the footer and saw something new. This notice wasn't just from Northridge HOA. It had a signature block from a county code compliance officer named Arnold Vexler. I hadn't heard that name before. I called Catherine. She groaned. "Vexler's been around a while. Always rides the edge of what's legal. There were whispers about him fast-tracking permits for the Eastview project last year, for a cut. Never proven. Is he even allowed to issue enforcement actions out here? Technically. Number. Not without a formal complaint process. You want me to dig?" I did. While she went to work, I checked the local Facebook groups. I usually avoided those digital cesspools, but something told me they'd be bubbling now. Sure enough, there it was. Post after post painting me as the rogue homeowner, the angry prepper guy, the anti-community militant. Some claimed I had militia ties. One accused me of threatening a child with a drone. Another said I'd stolen the land from a protected greenbelt. Pure fiction. I recognized the usernames. HOA board members, their cousins, a few sock puppet accounts, obviously fake. Classic smear campaign. I replied once politely. "My property is private, legally secured, and independently maintained. I welcome respectful dialogue. Everything else is being forwarded to legal counsel." That post got deleted within the hour. I was banned from the group. I sat on the porch that evening with a glass of bourbon, watching the SUVs still idling by the road. The sun dipped low, painting the sky with that dry orange glow you only get in the West. My dog lay at my feet, dead asleep, completely unaware that someone was trying to erase 15 years of my life with a bunch of forged documents and petty vandalism. I wasn't scared. I was angry, and I was documenting everything. I didn't expect the envelope. It came folded into thirds and slipped under my shop door late one evening. No return address. No markings. Just my name typed in courier font, like someone wanted to seem professional but couldn't afford a laser printer. Inside, 3 printed sheets and a post-it with a single line of handwriting. "I think you deserve to know. -D." At first, I assumed it was just another veiled threat or HOA junk. But as I read the documents, my gut turned ice cold. They were internal transaction records, wire transfers, consulting fees, line item expenditures. At a glance, it looked like basic bookkeeping, except it showed repeated payments from the Northridge Community Association to a series of shell companies. Tiny amounts recurring weekly, each transfer just under the reporting threshold. And right in the middle of the web, my new friend, Arnold Vexler. There were payment memos like consulting, site prep, permitting liaison, and title consolidation. A few were straight-up bribes, whether they used the word or not. One payment, $1,500, was marked simply boundary resolution. I knew exactly what they were doing. They weren't just harassing me, they were trying to erase me from the registry entirely. I scanned the whole packet and sent it to Catherine with a subject line, "Incoming bomb." Then I drove the originals to her office in a sealed envelope. "You know who sent this?" she asked. "No idea." I lied. I had a hunch. 3 days later, I got confirmation. I was in the garage welding a bracket for the porch railing when I heard a car pull up quietly. Too quietly for the gravel to cover it. I stepped outside with my welding mask still up, and there he was. Dennis. Young guy, maybe late 20s. Same one I'd seen once or twice fumbling with an HOA clipboard like it was on fire. He looked terrified, pale, sweat on his brow like he'd sprinted from his car to my porch. I didn't know who else to talk to. He blurted out. I kept my face neutral. "You alone?" He nodded fast. Look, I didn't sign up for this." I motioned to the shop. Inside. Now we sat across from each other at my workbench. He looked like he wanted to vomit into my toolbox. I do internal bookkeeping for the HOA. Karen's the face, but the real engine is the developer, guy named Leonard Gregg. He's the one buying up the lots and trying to consolidate titles. Karen just keeps people in line. Vexler, Dennis nodded, paid through a company called Argonne Consulting. It's fake. Gregg uses it to move payments. They've been slipping fees to get maps redrawn, permit approvals fast-tracked, land use designations changed. He slid a flash drive across the table. I copied what I could without raising alarms, financials, emails, a few scanned contracts. Some stuff is encrypted. I couldn't open it, but I know there's communication with the county recorder's office. Stuff that shouldn't exist. I stared at the drive, then back at him. "Why now?" Dennis exhaled hard. "Because I saw your blueprints. The house. All 15 years of work. The way you built it from nothing. They want to fold your land into a greenbelt easement and bulldoze it for a damn dog park." I laughed, humorless. "A dog park." He looked like he wanted to cry. "They call you non-compliant legacy parcel in the internal memos. They think no one will defend you. That it's too much trouble for law enforcement. They're wrong." He gave me a burner number, told me to never call his personal line, and vanished into the night like a low-rent whistleblower in a thriller movie. Catherine reviewed the files the next morning and nearly fell out of her chair. "This is it. We've got enough to file for a TRO, temporary restraining order, against HOA action. And I can forward the financials to the DA's office with a request for criminal investigation." She called Sheriff Whitlock immediately and forwarded him the packet. He promised to elevate it. With this much evidence, he couldn't ignore it. Not without becoming part of the problem. By that evening, Catherine had filed an emergency motion in district court. We requested an injunction against any physical interference with my property, pending review of the financial documents and forged notices. The clerk said we'd get a hearing within 72 hours. That night, I didn't drink bourbon. I archived every camera log, offloaded all my files onto 3 separate encrypted drives, and dug out the waterproof fire case from the basement. Then I sat on the porch, cleaned the shotgun, and checked my front gate's latch one more time. They weren't done, but neither was I. The notice was taped to my front gate in the dead of night. It was printed on thick stock paper, the kind used for wedding invitations or eviction threats. The title at the top read, "Final Enforcement Action, Vacate Immediately." Below that, in bold, was a forged court case number and a fake executive seal that looked like someone designed it in Microsoft Paint. They even signed it with a name I recognized, Arnold Vexler, with a shaky signature that didn't match his official filings. Attached was a so-called evacuation order citing public safety concerns, non-compliance, and unauthorized habitation of restricted community land. They were trying to evict me from my own damn house. I stood there at dawn holding the paper, jaw clenched so hard my molars ached. Then I heard it. Engines. Multiple. 3 vehicles rolled up. 2 large white pickup trucks and a box van with the Northridge HOA logo on the side. The truck stopped by the entrance to my driveway. 6 men got out. 2 of them I recognized, contractor types I'd seen hanging around the earlier roadblock stunt. The others were new, heavy-set, tactical boots, mirrored shades. The kind of guys who list security consultant on their tax returns but have 0 certification. Rent-a-thugs. One of them, a bald guy with a scar running down his cheek, walked up to the gate and rattled it hard. Per legal notice, you're required to vacate. We're placing this property under HOA reclamation pending administrative review. I laughed, dark and low. Administrative review? By who? Karen's yoga instructor. He scowled. You've been warned. We've got documentation. You don't want this to get ugly. They started assembling a sign at the entrance that read, Community Maintenance Zone, Restricted Access. Another guy, thin with a clipboard and a radio, moved toward the side entrance and began testing the latch. Then one of them headed toward the workshop. That's when the red alert went off in my head. Because inside that shop were everything. My backup drives, the original blueprints, notarized contracts, permits, and the only physical copies of several signed inspections from the early days. If they got in there, even just long enough to accidentally lose a folder, it could all vanish. I called the sheriff's line, straight to voicemail. I left a message, short and urgent. Illegal entry in progress at my property. Fake order posted. Armed presence at my gate. Please respond ASAP. Then I hung up, and I walked inside, opened the gun cabinet, took down the Mossberg. It's a 12-gauge pump action I've owned for 15 years. Legal, registered, never fired in anger. I checked the chamber, loaded it with rock salt shells, non-lethal but enough to sting like hell, and slung it over my shoulder. I stepped out onto the porch like a preacher walking into Sunday fire. Back away from the workshop. Now the guy with the clipboard froze. The bald one turned toward me, eyes narrowing. You threatening us with a gun? He asked. No, I said evenly. I'm warning you. You're trespassing. You've posted fake legal documents and you're attempting to unlawfully seize private property. That makes you criminals. The moment you breach that building, I have legal grounds for defense. He took a step forward. Big mistake. I pumped the shotgun, clack, chunk, and aimed it low. Not at him. Just at the ground by the tire of their truck. Last chance. They hesitated. One of the hired guys, clearly the smarter one, muttered something to the bald leader. Then the clipboard guy made a move for the latch. Boom! The shot hit dirt 6 inches from the front wheel, sent a puff of gravel into the air, loud as hell. The sound echoed like thunder off the hills. They all froze. You just discharged a firearm, the bald one barked. You just attempted a felony break-in, I replied. The cameras are on. Audio's live. You so much as scratch that lock, I'll consider it an imminent threat. That was technically true. Under Texas Penal Code section, justifiable force to prevent unlawful interference with property. I wasn't aiming at them. I wasn't trying to injure. I was signaling the line in the sand. They stared at me. For a moment, I thought the bald one might push it. His jaw was tight, fists clenched, but his guy pulled his sleeve and whispered something. They backed off, slower than I'd like, but they did. Loaded up the sign, unhooked the latch, walked back to their trucks. Nobody said a word. As they drove off, tires spinning gravel, I saw a familiar Prius pull in at the far end of the road. Miss Helen, holding up her phone from inside the car, waving it at me. I got it all on video, she shouted out the window. Nice shot, by the way. I grinned despite the adrenaline. Within 30 minutes, deputies finally arrived. Too late, of course. But they took my statement, reviewed the camera footage, and confiscated the fake eviction notice for evidence. They interviewed Helen. I filed a formal trespassing complaint and provided Sheriff Whitlock with the full footage and audio. Catherine called that night. You did what? I didn't hit anyone. Jesus, Rob, good. But don't touch that shotgun again unless they're breaking through your door with a battering ram. I didn't escalate, I said. They brought the war to my gate, she sighed. That video is going to help, especially if we get the TRO hearing tomorrow. I slept light that night, shotgun on the table next to me. I knew this wasn't the end. But for the first time, I saw fear in their eyes. And it felt good. The next morning, the air felt different. I woke up early, poured myself coffee, and checked the driveway. No trucks, no SUVs, no HOA stooges pretending to be government agents. Just silence and a couple of rabbits hopping near the cedar line. But I knew it was just the eye of the storm. By 8:30, I was at Catherine's office with a USB drive in my hand, labeled Gate Incident Footage 4. She looked tired, wired, like a woman who'd been up all night with legal books and vengeance. We got the TRO, she said. Judge Ramirez signed it an hour ago. Temporary restraining order against any physical interference by the HOA or its contractors. Sheriff's office has been served. You're protected. For now, I exhaled slowly. About damn time. But Rob, listen, this doesn't stop them. It slows them down. We need to hit them where it hurts. The documents, the lies. The money, we'd already submitted Dennis's whistleblower file to the DA's office, but it wasn't enough. Catherine wanted more. Signatures, proof of forgery, a smoking gun. Turns out we didn't have to wait long. That afternoon, Joe, my geodetic buddy, called from the County Archive Center. He was chasing some threads we'd flagged from the payment logs. One of the files from Dennis had mentioned an emergency title correction filing done 6 months ago, supposedly consolidating easement rights for the HOA. Joe traced it to a digital form logged under the name of Notary Lisa Wallace. Except there was a problem. Lisa had retired 4 years ago. He scanned me a copy of the notarized page. The signature looked neat. Perfect. Too perfect. I still had the original notary forms from my 2006 deed filings in my workshop. We compared them side by side. Different ink flow, different pen pressure. But the kicker, Lisa's notary stamp ID had expired in 2019. It was forged. Catherine lit up like a Christmas tree when she saw it. This is it. This is fraud. Criminal. If the DA doesn't act on this, I'll take it to the feds myself. She did better. She called a contact from a neighboring county's district attorney office, someone less politically compromised than ours, and forwarded the documents. By end of day, we had a callback. The evidence was credible and actionable. A special investigator was being assigned. While that was cooking, I got another visitor. He knocked quietly, 3 soft raps, and when I opened the door, there he was again. Dennis. Hoodie up, pale as printer paper. "I can't go back," he said. "They're on to me." "Did you talk to anyone else?" "No, but Greg, the developer, he's been asking questions." Karen stopped looking me in the eye. I brought him inside. He looked like he hadn't eaten in 2 days. "I've got the rest," he said, pulling a USB stick from his sleeve. "Encrypted backups. Their whole HOA email archive. I copied the shared drive before they cut my access." Catherine drove out herself to pick it up. She plugged it into a sandboxed laptop and started scanning. That's when we found the gold. Emails between Karen and Greg, dated over the past year, talking about strategic asset redirection, timeline for forced integration, removal of legacy holdout, and, most chilling, disabling of surveillance nodes prior to Phase 3. There were payment receipts, meeting notes, even a scanned internal memo referring to me by name. Rob Mitchell remains non-compliant. Recommend further escalation post-utility disruption. Must ensure documentation is unrecoverable prior to full takeover. They weren't just planning harassment. They were planning a full erasure. We also found files indicating collusion with Vexler, copies of wire transfers from dummy accounts to a shell company called Altus Infrastructure Solutions, registered to a P.O. box and linked via a buried spreadsheet to Arnold Vexler's cousin. Karen and Greg weren't just dirty, they were organized. We bundled everything, every email, every memo, every payment record, into a sealed submission and hand-delivered it to the state attorney general's office. Catherine insisted, no trust left for the local system. Sheriff Whitlock called me personally that night. His voice was grim. "Rob, we're opening a criminal investigation. Fraud, conspiracy, document tampering. Could go RICO if it sticks. Just stay cool. Don't let them bait you into another shotgun moment." "I'll behave," I said, "unless they come through the gate again." "They won't," he promised. "Not for a while." But he sounded tired. Later that evening, I sat with Miss Helen on her porch. She brought tea. We talked about flowers for a bit, then she leaned in. "You built that house by hand. Everyone saw it. We watched you dig, pour, hammer, wire. And now they think they can erase it with a map and a bribe?" She snorted. "Not in my county." It was the first time I let myself believe we might actually win. The courtroom smelled like varnish, sweat, and desperation. It was packed. Half the damn town had shown up. I sat at the plaintiff's table with Catherine, both of us calm on the outside, but ready to go thermonuclear if the judge gave us half a chance. Across from us sat Karen, stone-faced, hair in a tight bun, flanked by 2 overpriced lawyers trying to pretend this was just a zoning disagreement and not a house of cards built on fraud. Greg, the developer, wasn't even there. His legal team had already flipped on him, trying to save their own skins. Vexler was under house arrest, ankle monitor and all. Dennis was in protective status, officially listed as a cooperating witness. He wasn't in court, but his documents were. And damn, Were they devastating? Catherine opened with a calm, precise presentation. 15 years of documented construction, original purchase deed, survey overlays, permits, invoices, time-stamped photographs. She painted the full picture, stone by stone. Then she dropped the hammer. Fraudulent notary stamps, financial trails, encrypted emails between Karen and Greg. The memo with the phrase, "Ensure documentation is unrecoverable." She had Whitlock testify under oath that his office found signs of tampering at my property. Even Helen testified. Strong voice, clear memory. She didn't just see the trucks. She recorded them. Karen's attorneys tried to object, claimed the emails were misunderstood. The payments, routine consulting. The forged documents, errors in process. But the judge wasn't buying it. Especially not after a handwriting analyst confirmed the notary signature was forged, and a bank compliance officer traced the shell accounts directly to Vexler's cousin. Then came the criminal trial. The DA, backed now by the state's AG, filed charges for conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted unlawful seizure of private property, tampering with public records, and, yes, organized racketeering under a state-level RICO statute. Greg was arrested mid-flight trying to leave the state. Vexler took a deal. Karen didn't. She went to trial. The jury came back in 2 days, guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced her to 13 years in state prison and ordered restitution, including reimbursement to all affected homeowners who'd been strong-armed into bogus HOA fees. Greg got 12. Vexler walked with 3 and a destroyed career. And me? I filed a quiet title action to clear my deed of any and all future challenges. Judge approved it unanimously. My land, my house, my signature on every inch of concrete and copper. Untouchable now. I also sued the Northridge HOA directly in civil court. Catherine went for damages, legal costs, and emotional distress. We didn't ask for millions, just enough to rebuild what they tried to break. The HOA folded, disbanded under court order, assets seized, management rights revoked. Most of the homeowners were relieved. Turns out they'd been manipulated too. The final scene came not in a courtroom, but at the very place this all began. My porch. I was staining the railings when Helen came by with lemon muffins and a stack of newspapers. "Front page," she said, handing me one. Karen in cuffs. "Your name cleared, and they quoted your blog." I smiled. The headline read, "Veteran homeowner fights off corrupt HOA, wins legal battle over land." Funny. 15 years building that place, and only now did people finally understand what it meant to me. A month later, I held a small gathering. Not a party, more like a quiet reckoning. Neighbors came, real ones. We barbecued, shared stories. One of the old veterans from down the road brought his service flag. We raised it on the newly repaired pole beside the workshop. I didn't talk much, didn't need to. The house stood. The walls I laid by hand. The well I dug with rented augers. The trees I planted before they had leaves. All still here, all still mine. And the shotgun. It's locked up now. But the sign on the gate stays. Private property. Trespassers will be educated.